This video is on the subject of why modern science is doomed to failure, a spiritual analysis. So, I have kind of a nuanced or multifaceted perspective on science in general. I've done a few previous videos in this general realm, and so I am not in the opinion that science is good or bad, that science is, all flawed and all skewed, and it's just a religion, and it's just based on belief and opinions, and that it's only doing bad things for the world. I'm not of that perspective. I'm also not of the perspective that it is all awesome, it's all great, science is the answer to the problems of the world, and that it is all totally absolutely correct and right on. So the premise of this video is that the ultimate purpose of science is that science is about determining the nature of reality. If not, if you disagree with that assessment, then I can certainly respect that, and feel free to post your own opinions below. But for the sake of this video, then I am operating under the belief that science is about determining the nature of reality. So I'm going to tell a story in order to jump into this discussion. It is not of my own. It is from the Douglas Adams book, Life, the Universe, and Everything. And there is one point in the book, I believe it's on one of the planets in our own solar system, but I could be wrong. Anyways, it's on some other planet, not of Earth. And they invent a machine to tell them what the meaning of life is. And so, using the absolute latest technology, they build this extremely complex machine, and then it turns out that it's going to take 100 years for this computer to calculate what the meaning of life is. And so, they let it do its thing, the generations pass, finally the time comes up, the computer is about to announce the results of what the meaning of life is, and so everyone from, that planet or from that city or whatever, millions of people gather in order to hear the final answer of what is the meaning of life. Who wouldn't want to, hear what the answer is? And so finally the computer spits out its answer, and the answer is 42. No explanation, just that's the answer. The meaning of life is 42. And I don't know if Douglas Adams had a kind of deeper point in mind with that one, but it kind of speaks to where our modern civilization is at, which is that we have relegated the quest for truth to machines to such a great extent. What would science be without machines? Imagine stripping away machines, computers, etc., and then trying to, take a scientific perspective on seeking to understand the nature of reality without those machines. And you wouldn't have much left. Machines are, to a great extent, an absolutely integral, essential component of science. And in my mind, then this is a problem. In my view, then the quest for the nature of reality, the ultimate meaning of life, is not something that can be deduced through objective observation. And that is the ultimately fatal flaw in science, is this worshiping of objective observation as being the only reliable way to determine the nature of reality. And so the subjective experience is only valid up and until the point at which it can be confirmed and verified objectively by others. So your personal experience is meaningless unless it can be deduced, reproduced, determined with the exact same outcome by others seeking to be objective. So the big question, of course, is the physical universe all that exists to reality? And that's where you get to a huge chasm in this debate that, in my opinion, science will never be able to bridge. So science says that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of brain activity. Now, what does that mean? An epiphenomenon of brain activity. what is science's reasoning for coming to that conclusion about consciousness? Are there objective experiments that can be done that will prove that consciousness is purely a epiphenomenon of brain activity? And can they reproduce that result and show how consciousness arose as a result of the brain activity of humans or of Neanderthals or gorillas or whatever, whenever consciousness supposedly just popped into being within the confines of science? No, it cannot. To the best of my knowledge, there is no evidence showing that consciousness is purely a epiphenomenon of brain activity. What would that evidence even look like? And so this is purely just a theory, as solid as the Earth is flat, for scientists to explain where consciousness comes from, because there is no objective proof, evidence, that consciousness even exists. Is there any computer, is there any machine that can determine where consciousness is, what it is, verify with certainty that it even exists? To the best of my knowledge, and there is not. The only way that we know that consciousness exists is because of our own personal subjective experience of it, which scientists also have a consciousness, presumably, and so they can't deny it exists, even though they can't prove that it exists. So there is this unanswered question, which is not a peripheral, irrelevant concept, that of our human consciousness, and perhaps of consciousness of other beings, where it came from, what it really is, how it came into being, and how it relates to the physical world in terms of being imbued into our physical body. And so this issue of consciousness is really the doorway to a whole nother realm that science can't really even jump into. Science can observe reactions in the brain, your neurons, chemical, reactions going on, and equate that to thoughts that people are thinking or emotions that people are feeling or dream activity or whatever. And so they can make a correlation between activity within consciousness as people report it, just saying what they're thinking about, what they're visualizing. They can correlate that with various neurological phenomenon going on in the brain, and they can learn a lot about the brain in the process, and say, well, language is centered in this part of the brain, and art is centered in this part of the brain, and math is over here, and the right side of the brain is more associated with art and creativity, and the left side of the brain is more associated with mathematics and science, and they can make those kinds of determinations. But that in no way, shape, or form means that they have concluded that consciousness then is a phenomenon of the brain. This is a just absolutely obvious fallacy of critical thinking to say that because A and B occur synonymously, therefore A is causing B. To say that there is a correlation between brain activity and the actual experience of consciousness as described by an individual, just because there is that correlation does not mean that A is causing B. It could be that B is causing A. It could be that A and B are interacting with each other, and that there's a mutual exchange going on between those two phenomena. So science has this huge conundrum of what is consciousness? Where does it come from? How did it arise? And despite the incredible advancements of science, then it is still completely a unknown frontier, essentially. So this question of consciousness is really an elephant in the living room that science is ignoring to a great extent, and hoping that it will just go away on its own or else resolve itself somehow. And I don't know how that's going to happen, that science is ultimately going to make some sort of a determination on what consciousness is and where it comes from. How do you do that? How do you invent a machine to see into, determine the nature of something that you cannot locate? Something that does not seem to be a part of this material physical universe ultimately. And that's what I would say is the issue, is that consciousness is not a part of this physical material universe, and thus it is outside of the confines of science, because science ultimately is about the objective observation of this physical universe, and thus it cannot ultimately determine the true nature of reality, because not all of reality is encompassed within that physical universe that we see around us. That there is something beyond the physical, and our consciousness is the one undeniable evidence that something exists beyond this physical universe. And so that is really the doorway to a whole other world, a whole other realm that exists beyond the physical, and thus is outside of the confines of science and cannot be touched by science at all. And so the ultimate nature of reality then cannot be determined by objective observation. And so that is the fatal flaw of science, is this over-reliance on objectivity, and especially of machines, to tell us what the nature of reality is, because these cannot penetrate into our personal subjective experience of consciousness. And so science will no doubt continue to make these rapid advancements and pinpoint closer and closer exactly how old the universe is, and be able to reach farther into space and come to amazing discoveries about how many habitable planets there are, and create more amazing spaceships and things that can go further into space, etc. But meanwhile, there is a whole other realm of reality that is being ignored by science, and which cannot be determined that it even exists at all by science. And the way to deal with that realm of reality is through the personal subjective experience of one's presence of being, of one's consciousness. And so, in my opinion, and it's just, my opinion obviously, then the ultimate way to truly determine the nature of reality is through the inner quest within, the spiritual quest of going within and tapping into something greater through the doorway of your consciousness. And in so doing, then you connect with that other realm that exists beyond the physical universe, and which is a essential component of reality in the larger sense, beyond just the physical atoms and everything that is composed of the physical atoms within our universe here. And so this over-reliance on objective observation absolutely has its purposes. It's amazing and absolutely effective in its job of determining what is the nature of this world, and what is the speed of light, and how many atoms make up a water molecule, and what is the boiling point of water, and all this stuff that you have to be absolutely precise about if you're actually going to try to create something that adheres to those physical laws. You're not going to get to the moon based on faith or just based on intuition that I should make a spaceship shaped such and such, and again then give it a try, and that could have its effectiveness to an extent, but it almost certainly is not going to get you to the moon unless you actually know the true real reality of the physical laws and how they actually operate. So I don't mean to say that science is irrelevant, that it's ineffective, that it has no purpose. It does amazing things in this world, creating all of these contraptions that we use, like this camera here, and our automobiles and our computers and our satellites and everything else. But ultimately, then, if you really want to know what the nature of reality is, then in my view, then you have to go within. You have to give much greater value to your own personal subjective experience and stop completely worshiping objectivity as the only way to come to any real conclusions about reality, and make the subjective experience much more valued. And so, in my view, then the way for civilization, for example, to determine what the true nature of reality is, would be for people to gather together in groups of inwards-focused shamanic journeying, and with the highest of intentions and the clearest of minds, go within on an inner quest to see what they discover and report that back to the group. And so then you are taking the subjective experience. You're not saying it's infallible, that okay, whatever I experience is necessarily real, but you then start pulling together information from a multitude of sources in saying, what have you discovered, what have you determined, what are your realizations, what were your visions, what other realms did you see? Because many people report having experienced, witnessed, even journeyed to other realms of being, and then bringing those back and allowing them to be in consideration in a almost scientific sort of a pooling of different perspectives for the sake of compiling information from many different sources. Not just one guy has the truth and we'll listen to him, but let's bring our different perspectives together and determine what reality is, with our subjective experience being a very important of that quest. So I would say that ultimately there is a dead end for science in that regard, that it can pick apart the physical universe ad infinitum and create more and more advanced pieces of technology, but those do not take you in the true direction of what the ultimate nature of reality is. And so that is where science is doomed to failure, is that it is on a single-minded track that has great potential to it, but which has an end to it, in my opinion. That ultimately science is going to come up empty-handed and realize for every discovery we make, there are simply more questions, and we have not truly answered that ultimate question of what is the meaning of life and what is the true nature of reality. And then it will be time to go sit in a darkened room and meditate and see what you come up there, and make that an important component of your research. All right, thanks for watching. Take care.